Hey, happy Friday. This week the Google Pixel Fold had a pretty terrible launch, Tesla became the de facto charging standard across the United States, and Microsoft put on an incredible soap opera in court. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Brilliant. We start the week with the Asus Zenfone 10, which has just officially launched, and it is exactly what we expected. A rare beast that offers both an unusually compact design and a headphone jack, all with flagship specs, and the same €799 price tag that the 9 did. Kind of amazing. Then Nokia launched the new repairability-focused G42, which is designed so that you can swap the battery, the screen, the charging port, and the back cover all with relative ease. Nokia has also committed to stocking replacement parts on iFixit for 5 full years, and the phone's specs are not completely horrible for once, though you only get 3 years of software updates, which kind of kills this otherwise pretty promising direction. Next, Insta360 launched the Go 3 this week, which is like a GoPro with a flip-out screen where you can actually take the camera part out of the main body. The two are then still connected wirelessly, and you can actually mount the tiny camera part on whatever you want. My life is way too boring to buy a camera like this, but I do find all the Insta360 cameras very technically impressive. And talking of impressive, Carl Pays Nothing has just freshly raised $96 million ahead of them releasing their next phone, which now takes them to a total of $250 million. Of course, we know pretty much everything about the Phone 2 already, and it looks like it will be an almost high-end €700 to €800 flagship with slightly rounded corners. The company has reportedly made around $200 million in revenues last year, and in case you have missed it, I have just released a whole exclusive video on my TechAltar channel 3 days ago, where the Nothing team let me get behind closed doors and poke through their entire business. I think it is genuinely one of my best videos yet, and it is linked down in the description, so if you've missed it, then maybe check that out next. In somewhat underwhelming news this week, we have just learned from developers digging into Apple's Vision Pro system that the headset apparently won't let you walk around. There's apparently a speed limit if you move too fast, and a limited safe area of 10 by 10 feet, or about 1.5 meters into any direction. No wonder that all the demos were so stationary. Then, talking of AR, a report this week said that Google, surprise surprise, killed off its own project of building a pair of augmented reality glasses that it had been working on for several years after it acquired the AR company North in 2020. Instead, Google is reportedly focusing on just building software going forward to power the headsets of companies like Samsung. And my favorite part of the brief this week is a new report claiming that Silicon Valley startup bros are doing LSD and ketamine to appear more interesting for investors. This is because VCs, quote, don't want a normal person, a normal company, they want something extraordinary. You are not born extraordinary. Wise words. So, kids, if you want to succeed in life, remember to get your act together and get high on some illegal drugs already, goddammit. Okay, and for my first story of the week, the Pixel Fold has barely just launched on the market and its durability is already getting questioned. So the phone has just launched. I've had a little bit of time to play with this review unit, and while I generally think that it is a pretty exciting device, there are multiple concerning reports about it already. Ars Technica's Ron Amadeo reports that the screen of his unit broke completely after just 4 days, likely because it had a bit of dust settle in the part that is between the screen protector and the end of the screen, and because the bezels around the Pixel Fold's screen aren't raised as much as they are with Samsung's device, and because the device closes as tightly as it does, that dust likely pierced the panel as the phone was closed. Meanwhile, at least 3 different Reddit users have also reported various issues with their screens, despite the phone barely having gone on sales yet, which also seem to point at other issues with the crease and middle. Now, the review unit of my studio mate Killian here seems perfectly fine, and as somebody who's been using a Samsung foldable for 3 straight years without issues, I don't want to be too alarmist here. It is also important to point out that both Pixel users and foldable users are much more likely to report issues online than regular phone buyers, but a minimum of 4 reports in just the first few days seems like an awful lot for a device that has probably only sold in the thousands. So my recommendation would be that if you're kind of on the fence about buying one of these, then maybe just wait until this turns out to be either like a Galaxy Fold 1 level issue, which is catastrophic, or not a whole big deal after all. Samsung's next foldable is just a few weeks off as well, so my recommendation would be to wait and see what they bring to the market before making a purchase anyway. Okay, for my second story of the week, Microsoft was getting grilled by the FTC for a whole week in court, so we got a ton of really juicy details coming out of this case, and here is my brief summary. So the FTC is basically trying to prove that Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard specifically to give itself more Xbox exclusives, and their first argument is that, hey look, this is exactly what they did with their previous acquisitions. Through these hearings, we've learned that Microsoft bought the game studio Bethesda specifically to prevent their upcoming game Starfield from becoming a PlayStation exclusive, and that after the acquisition, Microsoft turned Bethesda's whole catalog of games into Xbox exclusives, including upcoming games like Indiana Jones, which already had a PlayStation deal locked in. The FTC also argued that Microsoft wanted cloud exclusivity as well, and we learned that the only reason that they've recently committed to bringing their games to rival game streaming platforms like Nvidia GeForce Now was that they were feeling a lot of regulatory pressure. Before that, they said no effing way to the deal internally. So those are the core arguments of the FTC, and Microsoft has basically two defense mechanisms, the first of which is an absolute hilarious classic of any company that is getting sued by antitrust regulators: self-deprecation. So Microsoft declared themselves a complete loser of the console wars, saying that, quote, "We try to compete, but as I said, over the last 20 years, we have failed to do that effectively." And then they also went on to say that their market share is just so tiny. Then the company went on to say that consoles are like the oil business while everyone else is switching to cars, and that there is no console growth in our Activision deal model. In other words, not only has Microsoft just completely lost the console wars, actually consoles as a whole are just yesterday's music, they're definitely not worth fighting for, and so this acquisition has nothing to do with their fight against Sony. Pinky promise. Meanwhile, Microsoft is also downplaying the cloud, calling it just a feature for Xbox and not a full present-day service, and they have repeatedly said that cloud gaming is so small that it is basically irrelevant. Those are big words from a cloud-first company, but apparently the whole reason for this acquisition, according to them, is to focus on mobile gaming. That's right, Microsoft argued that mobile is the future of gaming and that they are totally not dominant in this area, and that Activision Blizzard owns a bunch of successful mobile games which would let Microsoft launch its own mobile game store, and then they could take on the real giants and the real gatekeepers who are the evil Apple and Google. You see, Microsoft is the underdog in this scenario, and the acquisition somehow helps them create new competition, which is a genius move, but I actually do have to give them kudos in one specific area. The biggest game of concern for the FTC by far is Call of Duty, and taking that away from the PlayStation would actually be a pretty big deal. But not only has Microsoft signed every agreement under the sun it could find to say it would keep that cross-platform, we also just got straight-up quotes from Sony's PlayStation leadership where even they didn't believe that this was an exclusivity play from Microsoft at all. In other words, everyone seems to agree that Call of Duty is just too big to be taken away from the competition, and so this doesn't seem like a particularly strong argument. Okay, and for my third story of the week, Tesla charging has just become basically the USB-C of North America in an incredible series of events. So last November, Tesla announced that they opened up their previously proprietary connector to the competition and renamed that to the North American Charing Standard, or NACS. That is a bit audacious. It's kind of like Apple opening up Lightning to its competition and then calling it the North American Phone Charging Standard, if Lightning was actually good, that is. Anyway, after a couple months of silence, first Ford announced that they were adopting Tesla's standard, then General Motors, then Volvo and Polestar as well, while other brands like Hyundai have hinted that they are considering it too. Charging networks, including Electrify America, are now all committing to including NACS going forward. Washington State and Texas have both announced that they will make NACS mandatory in their state-subsidized charging locations, and the US Joint Office of Energy and Transportation and also the SAE, an actual automotive standards authority, have announced that they will basically promote this to a standard as well. Now, it's important to point out that we're just talking about the plug itself, not the whole charging network, but this landscape landslide all happened within the last 2 weeks or so, and it sure makes it look like Tesla has basically convinced most of the industry to adopt NACS as the de facto US standard, while other places like Europe have settled on CCS a while ago. And I can't find anything particularly shady about this from Tesla because they've actually kind of open sourced NACS, or at least they've made it an open standard, and they're also making it cross-compatible with CCS, the other charger, so you can use an adapter both ways. So this all seems kind of just fine. Now, I find that understanding electricity on a deeper level is one of those things that I've kind of just pushed to the side while I was in school, so maybe now is the time to brush up on my high school physics with a class called Electricity and Magnetism on Brilliant. Brilliant has a whole series of lessons and practice examples about exactly this, just as they have fantastic classes covering other topics in maths, science, computer science, and more. Maybe you have another area that you've been wanting to brush up on yourself as well, and with Brilliant's super well-designed interactive courses, you can not only do that in a way that is fun, but also in a way that is extremely effective. They have whole learning paths to follow from beginner to advanced levels, with each breaking down topics into small, digestible chunks full of exercises that really make you understand the fundamental learnings right away. All of these exercises are just great for the brain, and whether you're aiming to find a new job or you just want to get smarter, Brilliant has the right solution for either. You can get a 30-day free trial at brilliant.org/TFC, and the first 200 people using that link to sign up can also get 20% off their annual premium subscription if they choose to get one. Happy learning, and I'll see you next Friday.